Hello?
And by the way, Baruch Hashem, Walter, was really well attended. It was well attended for our shul. For that was it was well attended.
Comes in again.
Yeah.
I promise you, I'll make 10,000 people come this year. It's unbelievable his concepts that he has. This is a gem of a person. Where is he?
He's the Rav of Gush Etzion, and he's the Rosh Yeshiva of Machon Lev.
So he's into technology.
Shemitah. He's a Shemitah doc. He's been giving the Shemitah lectures all over the world. Okay, Daf Ayin. Aval Daima Minei. Remember we said we're talking about a man who gave kiddushin to a woman and then she became pregnant. So is the child a mamzer or not? So Aval Daima Minei, if there was a suspicion that they were fooling around, Afal Gav de Daima Me Alma, even though she was flirting with the whole world, Basrei Didei Shadinanle. We say that the father is the man who gave her kiddushin. How do we know that? Tiktani. We had our case, Yolda Toichel. We talked about Koyen who rapes a girl. So, and we said during the pregnancy she can't eat, but when she gave a child, so she can eat. Now the question is why? If there was rumors that they were fooling around, and not fooling around with the other word, so what's the big chiddush? Of course, he's the one that had relations with her. He was the one that they were suspected of, and he's a kohen. So of course, there's no chiddush that she's going to eat truma. Must be, and love the diamond nami me alma. There was suspicion with the guy, but also with the rest of the world. Now, and even you're not allowed to be mafate, to seduce, or to rape a girl. So there's nissa for everybody. And yet, we say that he's the father. Now, here, he gave her kiddushin. Yes, technically he should wait for nisuing, but it's his wife. So it's mutter to sleep with her. So l'koshake that we should attribute the fatherhood to the father. So that's Rav. No. It means even if there's suspicion that she was fooling with other people, even though there was also a rumor that she was sleeping with her kiddushin guy, the child would be a mamzer. Amarav, Avlad mamzer. Umas Nisan, our Mishnah that said that the wife is allowed to eat truma once she has a child, below daima klal, there was no suspicion at all. So there certainly we would attribute the fatherhood to the one who raped her or who seduced her. Eved poisel mishum bia. And if an Eved has relations with a Jewish girl, it passes her from eating truma. My time, Amar Kra, ha isha viladea tieh ladonea. So a shifcha, somebody who sleeps with a shifcha, and she has children, those children have no yichus. There's no yichus after the father. The yichus is after the shifcha. So another reason why Nevid passes bibia. Then the Mishnah said mamzer poisel meichel. However, it talked about grandchild. If a mamzer sleeps with a girl, that's lo yavo mamzer b'kal Hashem, so it's an aveira, so it's going to puzzle her. But if a grandchild is alive after, let's say, remember, somebody married a kohen and the husband died, and they had a daughter and the daughter died, and then there's a grandchild who's a kohen. He might be a kohen mamzer, but a kohen mamzer will still be Michael, the grandmother, eating truma. Ton rabban. The zera ain law. If you have a bas kohen, she can go back to her father's house if she doesn't have zera. Ain liel is zara. I might think only if she has herself a child. Zera zara. What about grandchildren? Talmud lomer v'zera ain lami kol makom. Any kind of zera. So if she has any kind of zera, she can't go back to her father's house. Fine. Ain liel zera kosher. Zera posel minayin. what about, and by the way, vice versa, if the grandfather's a kohen, that allows her to eat truma. That means if she's a bas kohen who marries a Yisrael, so if she has any child or grandchild, she can't go back to her father's house. Vice versa, if she married a kohen and the kohen dies, as long as she has some child, even a grandchild, that allows her to continue eating truma. So it's a parallel din. How do we know that even a mamzer? Look what the Gemara does. Ayin Allah. Investigate. Any kind of zera, even a zera posel. You use that drasha for a grandchild. So the Gemara says zera zera lo yitzchich. I don't need a posel for a grandchild because bnei vanim harein kavonim. There's a general rule. Grandchildren are like children. So ki yitzchich kra. L'zera posel. So I need the posel to tell me that even a zera posel will allow either the grandmother to eat or not allow the bas kohen to go back to her father's house. Is this only according to Rabbi Kiva, who said that mamzer is produced by relationship of chayv lavin? No, because the Rabbanan agree that if a goy or an eved has relations with a Jewish girl, the child is a mamzer. We don't pass him that way. We already went through the psak halach. We don't pass him that way, but this opinion did. Kohen gadol pamim shepois. We even had a strange case that even by a case of a kohen gadol with a grandchild, sometimes the kohen gadol will end up being passed. Ton rabbanan hareini korpars ben biti kuza shemachleni betruma. It means my grandchild allows me to eat truma, but for any kapars ben biti, kedusha post like that. But my child is a kohen, since it's some kind of zera, it doesn't allow me to eat truma. I'm a bas kohen, I can't go back to my father's house. Okay, ayin. And this is the parak that the sugi of Tzudaka starts, ha'arel. Uncircumcised man, b'chol ha'tmein, any kohen who's tamei, lo yochlu b'truma. However, nesheim v'avdeim yochlu b'truma. It means an uncircumcised kohen, he can't eat truma, but his wives and his avodim can. They're kinyan kaspoy. Same thing if the kohen is tamei, the noshim v'avodim can eat. Here comes Psuadaka Krushuvcha, a man who had his testicles destroyed. Krushuvcha is the urethra, right? The urine tube has been damaged. So think about it. If your urine, if let's say somebody's had an injury to the urethra, and they're not urinating through the tip, there's actually a hole in the urethra midway in the penile shaft. So some urine comes out of this way, and it happens. We can fix that through surgery. But there are, let's say, traumatic injuries that can lead to a fistula. So when a person ejaculates, the zera is not going to come out here. It's going to come out here.
What does it matter?
Because it's not going to, you can't impregnate your wife.
Is it just have to get in there and
Yeah, but if it's very proximal, it won't go into the vaginal canal. Okay? Children born, chas v'sholom, with hypospadias. Normal, the urethra is right at the tip. But the urethra can be anywhere along the penile shaft. Could be very proximal. Those people won't be able to have children because now that he's born that way. So that's the bidei shamayim, bidei adam thing. That bidei shamayim would not be a pseudo. But let's say someone did an operation and it failed, and you developed that fistula, that would be bidei adam, a krushuvcha. That's the difference between. We didn't deal with krushuvcha in our sefer. We dealt primarily with testicular issues. It's big enough of an issue. Maybe volume 2 will be krushuvcha. So. Interesting. Hein vavdein yochlu. So the kohen tzuadaka can eat truma.
Doesn't matter how Hashem is.
Yeah, but the orel, the uncircumcised male, the uncircumcised kohen could not. So we're going to have to see. Why can he not, and someone who's tamei or uncircumcised cannot, but the guy who's a tzuadaka can? Why? No, psudaka, it's bidei adam. If you're born with it, let's say a person is born without any testicles or is born missing a testicle. According they're both testicles are atrophic, right? But that's bidei shamayim. Nobody would hold that. Nobody holds it. That's a psudaka. Psudaka is only it's traumatic. A dog bites you. You jump over a fence and it tears you open or something like that. Or surgery. So it's got to be bidei adam. So then the difficult halachic shilas are, let's say a person has a diseased testicle, and then you remove it. That's what we decide. So most of the poskim are matir. We don't go like the Rosh. We go like the Rambam. That if you've got a disease and the surgeon has to remove your testicle, well, first of all, we've already learned tonight, if it's a beitza achas, it doesn't make you a tzedakah. Right? Okay. Hein vavden yochlu, because it's kinyan kaspu. However, neshein lo yochlu. Here, their wives can. Rashi says, neshein shel tzedakah krushchav lo yochlu, deshavi chalala b'biyosim. So first of all, it says, lo yavop tzedakah b'kal Hashem. So once he sleeps with his wife, he made her a chalala. He made her a zona, right? Because it's a bia be'isr. Now, we're going to have cases where they got married beheter, and then he became a tzedakah. There, as long as he doesn't have relations with his wife, he could stay married to her, and she could continue to eat truma. Now, v'im lo yoda mi shenaseh tzedakah krushavcha. That meant if he doesn't have relations, they got married beheter, and he never had relations with her afterwards. But they had been married beheter before. So then the wives can eat. Here it is in the Mishnah. Even one testicle, meaning it's removed. Nifzu means damaged, but it could be chaser, it could be missing some tissue, could have a hole in it, or could be missing completely. Krushuvcha, what's a krushuvcha? Kol shenichos hagid. The gid is the penis, right? The aver. If it's been cut and it's been cut all the way to the urethra, now this has to do with the gland's penis. As long as some of the glands remains, even like a hair, he would still be kosher. Tanya, how do we know that an uncircumcised kohen can't eat truma? Nemar toishav v'sachir. It says toshav kohen v'sachir lo yoichal kodesh. A toishav kohen and a sachir, we don't know what that is, cannot eat hekdesh. Now, it also says by the korban pesach, toshav v'sachir. So nemar toshav zachir b'pesach, nemar toshav zachir b'truma. Ma toshav zachir ha'omer b'pesach, orel aser bo. There it refers to an uncircumcised man, and he can't eat the korban pesach. Av toshav zachir ha'omer b'truma, orel aser bo. So when it says by truma, it means an uncircumcised man. Rabbi Kiva oimer no, ain't it sorry. You don't need that drasha. Areyu oimer ish l'rabbi so orel. It's ish. Mizera Aaron, V'hu Tsarua Ozav. That whole ish is the Rabos Arel, includes an uncircumcised man. Amr Mar. Okay, that's the Baraisa. Now the Gemara is sort of going to digest this Baraisa. Amr Mar. Rabbi Lezer Oimer. Nemar Toishav V'socher B'Pesach. V'nemar Toishav V'socher B'Trum. Ma Toishav V'socher B'Pesach. Orel Aser Bo. It refers to an Orel not being able to korban pesach. And this gzer shava has to be mufne. Mufne means it's free and clear. It's not needed for itself. And the Gemara explains why. The ilav mufne, because the gzer shava that's not mufne, and sometimes it's mufne mishneit studim. Sometimes it's only mufne from one side. But it's got to be some mufne characteristics. Because if it's not mufne, ikla mifrach. You can break a gzeir shava if there's logic to break it. What's the logic? Malav Pesach, shekein chayav nolav mishum pigul nois v'tomei. Listen, truma is not korbanos. Pesach is a korban, and therefore you have the concept of pigul. Pigul was the coin as a machshava to eat of the korban tomorrow, or to do the zrika tomorrow. Noiser is if the korban is left over beyond 24 hours. Tomei, of course, if it becomes tomei, needed kazais of it. So truma doesn't have that. So that's why Pesach is more chomer. So layafnu mufna. So therefore, the gzer shava has to be free and clear. So which side of the gzer shava is free and clear? Hey mufna. Eat the truma. Are you going to tell me that the pasuk of toshav tzachir by truma is Mufne mitzrach tzrichi. No, we need it. The Tanya. Toshav zekonoi kinyan oilam. You have two types of Eved Ivri. You have an Eved Ivri who is sold because he has a debt, $3,000. So he's sold for 6 years, $500 a year, until he pays off the $3,000. Why do I say this? Because let's say halfway through, he gets a Yerusha of $3,000, he can pay off his master and he gets out. It's an indentured servant. At the end of 6 years, he goes free. Now let's say at the end of 6 years, he says, I like my master. He's a Jew. He's not Eved Knani. He's an Eved Ivri. But he decides he wants to stay. So his ear, right, gets nirtza. Now, Toshav V'Sachi here refers to an Eved Ivri, one who works for 6 years, one who works for 50 years. Because even a nirtza goes up by yoiva. So Toshav Zekonim Kinyan Oilam. Sachir Zekonim Kinyan Shani. So the Yomer Toshav Vayomer Sachir. Say one and don't say the other. Listen, now, we're talking about now a Kohen who happens to have an Eved Ivri in his house. Now, does a Kohen own an Eved Ivri? No. Kinyan Kaskoy is something that he buys. So he owns an Eved Knani. That type of Eved can be eaten, can be fed Truma. But an Eved Ivri is a regular Jew. He's not owned by anybody. He can't eat Truma. He's a Jew. So, and that's removed from the words Toishav V'Sachir. Toishav Zekonim Kinyan Oilam. So the Yomer Toishav Vayomer Sachir, because when Yomer Konim Kinyan Oilam and Oichel, and if an Eved Ivri that stays for 50 years doesn't eat, so Konim Kinyan Shanim like Koshken, then I certainly would know that a 6-year Eved doesn't eat. So the Gemara says, Ilu Kenayisi Yomer Toishav Zekonim Kinyan Shanim. But then we could have learned, if you only written one word, Toishav, I would have thought that refers to an Eved Ivri of a 6-year term. And they wouldn't have mentioned Kinyan Oilam. And I would have thought that, listen, if you're going to stay with the Kohen for 49 years, you're allowed to eat Truma. So the Torah had to write both words to teach me both didn't. What did we just do? We proved that the side of the Gzeir Shava that had Truma on it, Toishav V'Sachir, it's not Mufner. Because you need Toishav V'Sachir to teach me these dinim. Says the Gemara, fine. Ela the Pesach Mufni. So the side of the equation, the Gzeir Shava, is the Pesach side. So hi Toishav V'Sachir because of Rachman of the Pesach, my need. So the question is, what are we referring to when we say Toishav, a dweller, and a Sachir? What are we referring to? Idem and Toishav V'Sachir, Mamish. If we're referring to them as Eved Ivris, either a 6-year type or a 49-year type, what? You should have a Toshav Zachari if to let me Pesach. They're full-fledged Jews. Just because they're an Eved, they're going to be potter for the Korban Pesach. Truma, and not only that, you already established that by Truma, they don't eat. So obviously, the Eved Ivri, it's not coined to the coin. So certainly, we're talking about cases where it's not coined to the master. Ela lafnui. Vakati mufne mitzad echadu, but it's only mufne from one side. B'shaminin leil Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi mufne mitzad echad lemeidim u'meshivim. Rabbi Lazar says that if you have a Gzeir Shava that's only mufne on one side, you can learn it, but you can ask a kash on it. So the Gemara says, "Kivin l'guf tzarich." Since we don't need it for itself, shari chad alamed, the shari chad alamed. So one is v'havalei gzer shava mufne mishnei tzedakah. So it's treated like a double-sided mufne gzer shava. Okay. So now the Gemara says, "Ima Pesach oinein aser bo." So if you're now connecting Pesach with Truma, so you got to go all the way. An equation is an equation is an equation. You can't learn, if everything on this side equals this side, everything that's here is going to be there. Now we have a din that an oinen, somebody who lost a relative that is not buried yet. So an oinen is potter from mitzvahs. He's also potter from the Korban Pesach. So ma Pesach oinen aser, av Truma oinen aser. So maybe he should be aser, but we know it's not so. an oinen's allowed to eat truma. Amar Vesi Barchanina Amar Kra, v'chol zar lo yochal kodesh. Zarus amarti l'chol v'lo aninos. Teaches me being a non-kohen prevents you from eating, but not aninos. Aninos doesn't prevent you from eating truma. Ema, maybe the drasha should be zarus amarti l'chol v'lo arelos. Why don't we exclude, maybe an orel should be allowed to eat truma. Why are you including oinen? Right? You have oinen and orel. You learned orel cannot eat, but an oinen can eat. Why? Why are you rejecting orel and including oinen? That's basically aim of the law arelos. So haksiv toisha v'sochim. There's a pasuk that excludes them with toisha v'sochim. What do you mean? Umara isa. Whenever the Gemara uses the phrase umara isa, means logically it's equal on both sides. You have a pasuk for oinen, you have a pasuk for toisha v'sochim. Why did you throw orel out and keep oinenim eating truma? Mistavra arelis havalei ribu. Not only that, so the Gemara says it's logically that we're including arel being uncircumcised to be prohibited. Why? Shekain maisim krusim bedovra oven. This is a simon. Number one, mechusar maisa. Being uncircumcised, you're lacking a maisa. Not only that, the maisa is begufo. It's physically in his body. Number three, onush koris. By not circumcising, he gets koris every day. And yesh no lefnei adibur. The mitzvah of Mila was given even before Matan Torah. Avram Avinu was already told about Mila. Number five, umila zachar vavodav ma'keves. Not only that, the Evet Knani, that which we said, if a kohen owns an Evet Knani, that they eat truma. Yeah, but they got to undergo circumcision. So you see, Mila has all these things going for it. Adirabba, aninos havalei l'ribui. Maybe aninos should be included. Shekain yeshna b'chol shah. Until you bury, right? An orel can stop his arelis right away, but an oinen cannot until he buries the person. V'noheges b'nashim v'nashim. Arelis is only a status that exists by males. There's no such thing as an orel by female. But a female can be an oinen. Somebody asked me on Shabbos about that, right? There is concept of aninas by nosh. Vein biyodel l'sakin is atzmo. An oinen, a uncircumcised man can take care of himself. Go have a circumcision. An oinen is waiting. So the Gemara says, but orel hanech nefishin. There's more things about orel that would put it to make sure that they're going to be the ones not being able to eat truma. Rav Omer b'loy hanech nefishin nami l'matzi samar. Even with all this analysis you just said, you 5 versus 3, you don't need that. Shavkinan arelis, the ksuv begufe, the Pesach. It's written in the Pesach directly that an oral can't eat it. And v'yalfin aninas be Pesach. So for the Gemara, well, you could learn aninas from Pesach, the Pesach gufe meiser gamrinan, because Pesach is also a lima to meiser. So ima Pesach milas chorv avodav ma'kemetz. So the korban Pesach cannot be eaten by males or avodim that are not have mila. Of truma milas chorv avodav ma'kemetz. So the same din applies to truma. The kohen can't eat truma until his avodim and males in the house have been circumcised. Umalsa oso. This is by the korban Pesach. Az yoichal boy. Milas chorv avodav ma'kemetz boy melechol b'Pesach. But the ein milas chorv avodav ma'kemetz b'truma. So the milas of chorv avodav are not ma'akev by truma. It is by Pesach, but not by truma. Is that so? Yachi ema kol orel lo yochel bo. There's a bow there by orel. It's too bow in a ochel. Aval ochel hu b'truma. And you could say that an oral could eat truma based on that. But the Gemara says aksiv toshav v'sochir, which says they can't eat. Umar isa. So again, what's the logic to go one way? Mistav arelus to guf avalei l'ribui. Arelus have more going for it. Ma'isa begufo of onush koris. Adarabba milas chorv avodav avalei l'ribui. Shekain yeshna b'chol shah. Person could do the meal at any time. But the Gemara says the thing by Arelus anach nefisha. Be boy same if you want. I'll tell you below anach nefisha nami lo matzasamet. Even without this calculation, we would choose Arelus because me committed Arelus to guf lo ma'akva but Arelus tachrinim akva day. You're telling me that his own body, arelis, is not going to be ma'akev, but the arelis of his avodim is going to be ma'akev? Can't be. It must be that the orel himself, the Kohen himself who's an orel, has to be, not be able to eat truma. Oh, Ashdam is bo l'drasha, Uda asa. So now you said that this bow, right? Kolora lo yochal bow, referring to the Pesach, umalto so, right? Mila zchar of ma'akas, but not truma. So the Gemara is going to bring other drashas, right? Ashdam is bo l'drasha, Uda asa kol ben nechar lo yochal bow lamali. So that we're going to learn tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow we'll learn at 7:30.